Welcome back to Race Against Dementia's Memory Series with motor racing legend Sir Jackie Stewart. In today's episode, we have a chance to catch up with Jackie about his memories of one iconic day at Goodwood that would ultimately give him his opportunity in Formula One, and how through a chance meeting with a young lady, Jackie would go on to find his ultimate teammate. We also talked to Jackie about how, through some of his darkest moments, it was finding a passion that allowed him not just to survive, but of course, go on to thrive. 1964, that legendary day at Goodwood Motor Racing Circuit. There were a number of famous names in motor racing there. I'd just love to know if you can remember the different people that were there. Of course, you would effectively go toe-to-toe with Bruce McLaren at that point. Just your memories of that day down at Goodwood.
Well, I got a telephone call because I had been doing quite well with the Equiacos, because they had a Cooper Monaco sports car, which was an older one, but it was a good little car. And I had the lap record at Goodwood. And the manager of the Goodwood circuit had told Ken that if he was looking for a driver, this would somebody to look at, because I had just set the lap record. And he called me up to see. In fact, he called my brother up to see if he thought that I would want to go racing in single seaters. And then called me after speaking to Jimmy Stewart. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go single seaters. My dream would have been to drive for John Coombs or Rob Walker in a GT Ferrari or a lightweight Lee type Jaguar. That would have been my dream.
Yeah.
But single seaters, I thought, I don't know, do I want to do that? And of course, I had been doing the circuits in Britain only with Equiacos, and in those Jim Clark I had already got to know, because we're doing sports car races together and touring car races together, etc. And I phoned up Jim Clark, and what do you think? Do you think this is something I should do or not? He said, no, if you want to be a racing driver, then you've got to go single seaters. And if you want to go single seaters, Ken Tyrrell is the best man to go with. And I phoned up Ken Tyrrell. In fact, he phoned me back, and I said, yes, well, I would like to come down and test for you. So I went down on my own, drove down, couldn't afford a flight in these days. And the track manager was there. But when I arrived, John Cooper was there.
Yeah.
The Cooper Car Company. Bruce McLaren was there. Ken Tyrrell was there. And the mechanics that I was later to have as my mechanics were there that day.
Yeah.
And I had never driven a single seater before. And it was such a joy to drive a car with that kind of, it was just so precise. Anyway, I drove at Goodwood, and I knew the Goodwood circuit because I've been driving for Equiacos there. And Bruce McLaren was there, and I couldn't understand why he was there. But the car was brand new in the formula. It was the first new formula of Formula 3. And because he was a works driver, he was there apparently to set a time to see if I was going to be quick enough. So he went out, and Ken said, the car's never been raced before. He just wants to see if it's okay, and John Cooper, etc. And then he let me drive it, and I was brought in. They said, look, take your time. You're going too fast. Take your time. Just go out again. So I went.
Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't know what I was doing. I just drove. The car was so good. Driving a single-seater car was so precise. It was just like, it was a diamond. And I never forget, John Cooper had gone up to the first corner at Goodwood. What's it called? Madgwick?
Yeah. Is it the first corner?
The first corner at Goodwood, a right-hander.
Yeah.
And he ran down when I had come into the pits, and from 50 yards away, he shouts to Ken, you've got to drive, you've got to put him under contract.
Yeah.
And he was wearing his tartan. He always wear a tartan tammy quite often. And he was wearing that. And anyway, at the end of the day, Ken Tyrrell said, well, we would be interested in you driving for us. Come back to my house for afternoon tea. Anyway, I went back to Ken's house, and he offered me a drive. And I said, well, that's very nice. What do I have to do? He said, well, you'll have to do the European Championship as well as the British Championship. And I went to Snetterton a week later, and I won the race by a big margin. It was a wet day, and I got what was it? I got something like £800
Wow.
for the win and the bonus.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, wow.
We've missed out quite an important part here, because if we jump to, I think it was February '63 that you signed for Equiacos. Does that be about right? So I think we've missed out something. I think we've missed out something the year before, because you obviously you'd met prior to that, and then ended up marrying a young girl who at the time was known as Helen McGregor. And I think probably we shouldn't skip over that part. I've obviously had the privilege of meeting Lady Helen, and we've spoken many times about the stories, particularly from the 60s and 70s. But what I don't know is how you guys first met.
Well, it's a good story. I had a good friend of mine, a golfer, and he was going out with a very nice girlfriend in Helensburgh, and he said, "Would you like to come and I'll try and get you a blind date?" So I arrived in Dino's Radio Cafe in Helensburgh, which is still there, by the way, and the same family running it. And they had a jukebox at the end. And this girl had been lined up to go out with me. And she took one look at me and she said, "I'm not going with him." And by chance, Helen was sitting beside the date of my good golf friend. And I said, "Well, why don't you come out? We're going for a drive and, we'll do some things." And she said, "Okay." So that was the beginning of that. And this girl, Patricia was her name. She's well disappointed later on. She didn't take the date.
So yeah, you were a young mechanic.
So
probably.
I was a mechanic in the garage at the time, but I was already shooting.
Okay.
My pigeon shooting was taking a lot of my life at that time. But Helen was 16.
Yeah.
I was 17.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah. Well, I will talk obviously a lot more about that as we go on, but you mentioned shooting there, and I think for me, when I look at the story of your life and kind of key moments, I think for anyone who has a child that struggles in anything at school, it's so difficult to watch, and I can't imagine at a time that you were growing up when not a lot was understood about dyslexia, how challenging that must have been, how embarrassing as a young lad that must have been at the time for you, and what an outlet shooting must have been to find something that you were talented and good at and could put your heart and soul into, I guess.
Well, the worst time of my life. I mean, dyslexic in those days was never recognised. Nobody knew what dyslexia was. Certainly my teacher didn't know at that time in primary school. So you had the one teacher, it was Miss Shaw was her name. Now, she didn't know anything about dyslexia or any form of learning disability, which it surely is. So I was a complete disaster. To this day, I can't read and write correctly. I mean, I couldn't spell your name, for example. I couldn't probably spell Ferrari's name. It was the most unhappy time of my life. I mean, I had more illnesses to stay away from school than I think anybody else ever had.
Yeah.
Fortunately, shooting came into my life when I was 14. And suddenly I got real good at it. And I didn't know why. My grandfather was a gamekeeper. My father was a very good shot. And I started to shoot clay pigeons. And while I was still at school, and I won my first ever competition in Garthacharn Gun Club. And the trophy was this big. And I was, for the first time in my life, I was good at something. Went through the rest of my school years till I was 15, or just before 15 actually, and I left school and started to work in the garage as a mechanic. So my shooting came way before my motor racing, and I got quite good at that. I shot for Scotland, and then I shot for Great Britain. Went around the world with it. In fact, that's there is the World Championship. Right above it is the British Grand Prix of shooting. And, for those who are looking at this, the mums or dads or those of younger years who have got learning disabilities, particularly a dyslexia, God straight, look after them. Einstein was dyslexic. Leonardo da Vinci was dyslexic. Muhammad Ali was dyslexic. Absolutely. So many really successful people. Because when you're dyslexic, you cannot think like the clever folk. So you think outside the box. You find other ways of doing things.
Thanks for watching Memories with Sir Jackie Stewart. If you enjoyed that episode, please go to raceagainstdementia.com/memories for more. Soon we'll be talking about Jackie's World Championships, right the way through to speaking to some of his rock and roll friends, other sporting heroes, and beyond. Make sure you stick around. In just the time it took me to say that really short outro, I was astonished to hear 6 people will have been diagnosed with dementia. An astonishing 1 in 3 of us will experience it in our lifetimes. A shocking statistic I simply couldn't believe. And if you're as shocked as I am and would like to know more, please go to raceagainstdementia.com to find out what's being done to try to win the race and ultimately beat dementia. Thank you.